I am Thomas Muzzell, artist for Johnny Recruit, and coming to you through True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. On this episode, I chat with Thomas Muzzell about Johnny Recruit. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. Since 1984, Thomas has been a freelance artist, with his first published work appearing in a children's magazine. He's a self-taught artist, having honed his pen and ink and pencil skills on such projects as advertisements, cartoons, novels, and magazine illustrations, and of course, comic books. Johnny Recruit is one of his most recent projects. Set in wartime Canada, England and Germany in 1941 to 1942, Johnny Recruit is a story about hope, heroics, and youthful ambition. When 14-year-old Big Johnny learns his uncle's been captured by Nazis, he's sure the only person who can rescue his mentor is himself. Stellar bush pilot and expert game hunter, Johnny lies about his age and joins World War II to find his best friend. But when a rival British pilot threatens to expose his secret, Johnny faces tough decisions no young kid should have to make. Johnny Recruit is described as a coming-of-age story, from innocence to experience, and this isn't a tale lamenting lives lost, the peripheral impact of battle, or the tragedy of blindly following duty for one's country, but rather a story of love for family. And so, without further ado, here's my chat with Thomas Muzzell about Johnny Recruit. Thomas Muzzell, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
No problem at all.
I appreciate your time. What I usually do to start off the interview is ask the creator about their first comic book. So I'm wondering if you remember, what was the first comic book that you read?
Well, we're going back decades, remember, but I can remember reading books like Two Gun Kid, Rawhide Kid. Those were the beginning books back when I was, say, 10 years old. Stuff like that, just your general kid stuff.
Sure.
Of course, back in those days, there wasn't a whole lot of too serious books in those days.
Right. Now, would you find those at the newsstand or on a spinner rack?
Wow, I can remember where I was from was Meaford, and there was a local pharmacy that had a rack of comic books, and then there was a corner store that actually had a spinning rack. And,
wow.
Yeah, the good old days.
That's right, the good old days when we get
12
our
centers.
we get our allowance and go down and figure out if we buy the candy or the comic book. That was pretty much right.
You got it.
That was it. There you go. So lots of inspiration back then, but I'm wondering who or what inspires you to create today?
I would believe that it's still the same artists that I grew up with, and seeing their art back in those days before I knew what good comic book art was. There were certain artists that stuck out in my mind, and they're still my favorites today. Guys like Neil Adams, Barry Windsor Smith, Bernie Wrightson, Mike Kaluta. And there's some today that are super fantastic. Like there's Simon Bianchi. I just absolutely love his work. Jay Lee is another big name.
Lots of good stuff there for sure. So we're here talking about your latest project called Johnny Recruit. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the story and maybe what inspired you to illustrate it. Well,
how do you word Johnny Recruit? It came from the mind of Acil Behe, and it's loosely based on an uncle that he had that was in the Second World War. And actually, through our conversations, I found out that their uncle's name was Bert. Well, I also had an Uncle Bert who was also in the Second World War. So that was really cool there. There are so many similarities at the beginning of this, and it just seemed that it was meant to be.
Right.
So there's that connection right from the start. So the story is about a young fellow. He's underage and decides he's going to get into the war to try and find this Uncle Bert who has been taken prisoner. And like a number of fellows back in those days, he snuck into the military underage, and he aspired to be a great pilot and very brave for his age. And he goes in and, without giving too much of the story away, he does a good job on what he planned on doing.
Sure. Was there one element of the story that really hooked you? Was it the name Bert? Was that the thing?
No, that was a definite help, but I just love the Second World War period. As far as you can say that you love it, I'm very interested in the Second World War. I love period pieces. I very much like looking up reference and dealing with realism. And there was a great deal of reference involved in this story because both myself and Theo, we wanted things to look real, and they had a certain look in mind. And I think through the collaboration, we managed to do a pretty good job.
Sure. Yeah. Can you talk a bit about the collaboration process with Theo? And for those who haven't listened to the other podcast I did with him, he's just a student in high school. So I was curious because this is his first project. I'm sure you've worked on others. How was the collaboration process?
Well, his father helped him some, of course, since he is young and it's his first gig. However, they did have a very good written out synopsis of what they wanted. They were very particular, but also allowed me a great deal of artistic freedom. And I did very little redos, if you want to call them that. They didn't ask me to change too much. I came to understand exactly what they wanted. And, and the fact that they were all double-page spreads in the book.
Right.
Made it very challenging, but in a good way. They had ideas of what they wanted in the picture. They would explain it, and there would be occasions where there might be 2 or 3 different angles going on all at once. Well, obviously, if you're dealing with a double-page spread, which is one picture, I can't show it from all those angles.
Right.
So I had to do it in such a way that I could present what they wanted in the best form possible. And it was a lot of fun. It really was.
Good.
A lot of work, a lot of thinking involved, a lot of preparation, and, well, I think the results are pretty good. They're happy. I was happy doing it.
Right.
And
Yeah. Now, you hinted a bit about research before to make sure it was as accurate as possible. Can you elaborate a bit more on what type of research you did and how far back you went and what you had to do?
Well, everything to do with the Second World War, of course. Like I say, they had certain things that they wanted shown in the pictures. So whether it was airplanes, uniforms, of course, different scenes of the Allies reaching the beaches, even prior to the war, when Johnny Recruit is at home dealing with the Northern Ontario, I had to put animals in. I wanted to make everything look believable, realistic. So, yeah, I researched everything right down to dresses and furniture, everything to get the proper feel. Yeah.
Did you use elements from the internet, or did you use movies, or was it just a combination of all sorts of things?
Mostly internet. However, I did go through movies, yes. Lucky for me, I'm very much a movie buff, and I like old war films, so of course I pulled things out like 12 O'Clock High with Gregory Peck.
Right.
Great reference right there.
Sure. Good stuff. Yeah, it's a very compelling story, that's for sure. So I'm wondering, do you think that you and Theo might want to continue this in the future?
Well, that's very interesting. I have said to Theo and his dad, this is a good enough story. I would love to see it as a feature film. I really would. It plays well as a movie. And we'll see if that happens or not. And I've already said to them, and they've replied to me as well, that it would be great to do more. And as a matter of fact, I've just started a new project with Theo's sister.
Oh, wow.
Now, I can't say too much about that. I don't know what they want me to release.
Sure.
So other than saying that I've just started a new project with them, that's about all I better say.
Right. Sure. Understood. So I want to switch gears a wee bit and talk about the tools that you use to create your art. I wonder if you could walk me through your workflow.
Well, I have little trolls that get up in the middle of the night. And
Well, I wish we all had that, yes.
I'm old school. As old as I am, I don't want to learn how to use the computer too much.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm the old-fashioned 11 by 17 page. I pencil everything out by hand. I then, of course, take pictures of it, send it off to my client. They okay it or ask for changes, whichever. And then when it's A-okay, then I just sit there and ink it. The whole process for me, I'm not super fast, but then I'm not terribly slow either. So from the time I start a penciled page and then it's inked, it probably takes me, 12, 14 hours. And I do this full time, so I'm not making a fortune, but I'm definitely doing what I love to do.
Sure.
And
No,
I just, yeah.
sounds good. Do you use, is it all, I apologize, is it paint or is it pencil or...
Yeah, I just use an ordinary pencil. It doesn't really matter to me what the lead is. I want something light, of course, so I can erase it later. And then I like using micron pens. I don't use a dipping pen too much anymore. I used to use one all the time, but it's very time-consuming, even though it does do a better job. Once you get into the working for people, trying to get it done as quick as you can, you have to cut corners sometimes.
Right.
And, I find the micron pen works very well for me. That's my number one tool. And I'm pretty straightforward. No bells and whistles when it comes to me.
Sure. Well, was there a bit of a challenge? You mentioned that the 2-page spread is kind of unusual. Did you find that was a limiting factor, or was it too much space that you had to fill?
Well, that's a very good question. When we first started, I found it very intimidating because you don't do too many double-page spreads, and if you do, there's usually 2 or 3 panels.
Right.
Remember, as a comic book artist, you're dealing with panels.
Yes.
So with this particular story, it was very different because it's a double-page spread of one scene, and every page was like that. So from start to finish, there was no let-up. There was double-page spread, double-page spread, double-page spread. So after a while, it actually got easier for me because I got used to it. And I did it on 2 regular-sized sheets. I didn't cut down the size. So it allowed me to put even more stuff into the picture. I was enjoying it. If I wanted to make a lot of money, this project wouldn't have made me rich. I'm not putting down the money that I was given. I don't mean that.
Right.
But from the standpoint of putting the hours into it,
yes.
I put a lot of work into the book, and there's certain pages that stand out and show that. I can think of one page in particular of the bar scene where Johnny is in there and he's being almost discovered as to who he is and his age. And I got the thing so packed full of people and reference stuff. I spent way too much time on that page.
Oh my.
However, it was so much fun.
Sure. Yeah.
So, you weigh what you're making, but when you enjoy what you're doing, the money isn't as important, as long as I pay the bills.
There you go. So it's very rewarding, I guess, is the bottom line. That's good.
Yeah, it is very much.
Good. Well, we've talked about Johnny Recruit, and you hinted about another project, but do you have any other up-and-coming projects that you can talk about?
Yes, I've done a number of books in the last couple of years. I've always done artwork, yes, and made some money on it over the years. It wasn't a full-time thing. It was you still had your full-time job and you did this on the side. Well, 2.5 years ago, I retired myself early and I took this on full-time, and I've been extremely busy. So I've done a number of books in the last couple of years. Right now, besides having just finished Johnny Recruit and now taking on a new book, also with the same folks, I'm also doing a graphic novel for a company down in Hollywood. They're apparently going to be making it into a movie. We'll see when the time comes. I just finished another project in England concerning a feature film. I'm working on the second book of a book called Wolfsbane, which is to do with a werewolf. The first book is finished, and the fellow will be releasing it very soon. And I'm now working on the second. I also did another comic book, 2 of them, for a science fiction comic. Another production company in California. I did 3 stories for them. They're going to be used as trial runs for a TV series. Mm-hmm. And apparently they tell me that the one in particular is going to be picked up in the spring of next year. Hopefully that would be great.
Yeah.
Anything that's good for them, of course, will be good for me too. And tons of small jobs. I'm also working for an educational college, I guess is the best way of putting it, down in the States right now. I'm doing some biographies for them, just 1-page biographies, and they will go out onto the internet concerning their college as an extracurricular. My name is getting out there.
Yeah.
I'm doing so many different projects. It's very enjoyable.
Good. Well, with all that on the go, do you have a website where you recommend people go to find out about your current and your future projects?
Yeah, just my name.com. So it's thomasmuzzell.com. And you'll find a number of samples of my work. And I don't get onto it all that often, but I like to put up things, what's going on, and some of the projects that I've done. I'm a one-man show, so I don't get on there as often as I should. But there's enough on there. It would keep people interested.
Very good. Well, Thomas, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering, is there something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview?
I really don't think so, other than to say I absolutely love what I'm doing. I wish I'd started doing it 30 years ago. I had no idea that I would get the response that I did, and it's been super enjoyable. I apparently retired myself early, but now I'm busier than I ever was doing what I absolutely love to do. What's the downside, right?
Thanks to Thomas for the chat. You can discover more about Thomas at Thomas Muzzell, that's ThomasMuzzell.com. You can discover more about Johnny Recruit on Facebook.com/Johnny Recruit. And you can discover more about the writer of Johnny Recruit, Theo Behe, in a previous podcast. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2022.